And we are live. Well, aloha, everybody. We're so excited to welcome you to episode 5 of Ascension in the Raw. So I'm here with the lovely Annette Shaner. My name is Marissa Indigo, and welcome. Before we jump in, I want to just welcome everyone to eclipse season and essentially a launching off pad into a lot of new, wonderful everything. Uh, because we're getting ready for solar new year as well. So we have the eclipse the 13th and 14th of March, full moon, total lunar eclipse in the sign of Virgo. And then we have not long after that the spring equinox, which for me, the spring equinox is the real new year, the solar new year. So there's a lot of excitement coming. And we thought it would be really nice to cover some fun subjects today. So, the subject for today's show is multi-sensory abilities or multidimensional gifts and things like synesthesia that we're going to talk about. So, before we jump in, I just want to welcome everybody here live, here on the replay, and also invite everyone to intentionally connect with Mother Earth now. Ask her to receive your grounding trunk and just drop in and start to connect with Gaia, with Mother Earth. It's very supportive for us to remember to connect and work with consciously the earth elemental at this time because there's a lot of energy, there's a lot happening all at once. So, with that, I just want to welcome you, Annette. And if there's anything you wanted to jump off with.
No, I think you hit on most of it. I was on a live the other day, and I had mentioned that I noticed that for the first time that I thought all the leaves fell off in the fall off the trees, and this is the first year I noticed that they don't all fall off. There's a lot of leaves still on the trees, and I was like, I guess the spring, the spring new growth kind of pushes it off, and it may just made me think of how I normally will think of how I get my template for the next linear year. Like I'll start feeling it a little bit in the summer before, So for 2025, I started feeling around the summer of 2024 as to what needs to go, usually around the solstice. These things need to go. So even though I might not know what I'm focusing on the next year, I know certain things need to be moved out, certain things need to be aligned, certain things can't go with me. I have to clear something. And then by the fall, I start getting an idea, and I might not have boots on the ground and start doing it, actually anchoring in that reality until maybe the spring. So when I looked at nature and saw the leaves still there and all the things that we might still be carrying that are going to be pushed, that eventually we either have to let them go on our own or they're going to be pushed off when the new comes in. So I just thought that was just sort of an interesting kind of parallel. So I'm going to let you continue and start us off.
That's great. Thank you, because you touched on this so organically. And welcome, Bucky. Thank you for being here with us. Happy eclipse. Um, the eclipse, this action of this eclipse is helping us to actually cut away. So you could think of cord cutting, refreshing habits, also welcoming in new gifts. And what was really fun the other night as I was tuning in for our show, I remembered there's a great show, I think it was on NBC, Heroes, back in the day, and all of these random people or like normal people seemingly at first, an eclipse happened and they all got these really amazing different kinds of superpowers and gifts and abilities just like turned on overnight. And I was playing with that concept, and then today I was getting more on that, which is you can expect all of us, we've been working our butts off, to clear, to come more into alignment and to raise our consciousness and to be our best selves and whatever that means. And you can expect gifts, more amazing access, different ways of receiving information, even, and kind of a blending or a bleed through of the senses. A lot of really amazing things happening with this eclipse and going forward. And it's nice. It's nice to have something to be open to that's kind of fun and magical and fanciful. And with that, I wanted to start. I think it would be really fun. Annette was talking about one of her wonderful cats before we hopped on together. And in addition to gifts that will come, it's good for us to look at the ones that we have had our whole lives, because it helps us to acknowledge, like, oh my gosh, I have been multidimensional my whole life. I just wasn't super aware, of all the specifics and so on. Um, Animal communication. animal communication. For many of us, that is a natural way of a divine connection with other sentient life here. So that's really special. And if it's not one that you have innately had as a part of your being, you can expect that you will start to observe and just be aware that animals are communicating with you. So when you're maybe out hiking or out for a walk in your neighborhood and you pass by someone with their dog, connect with the dog, really look at the dog. And obviously, some don't pay us any mind, but the ones that do, that really look in your eyes and look in your soul, you start to realize, like, oh my gosh, this creature, this animal sees me. And it's really lovely, just food for thought, for fun, to look into dolphins and how we can communicate actually telepathically through holographic images with dolphins. And I'll actually do that with my cats. I've done that with deer out in the forest. So if you're trying to communicate to protect an animal, it was very interesting. I was delivering and I was in this neighborhood and it was called Deer Run. And I was at a four-way stop that didn't have a light, and it was one of those back roads where people go pretty fast through the forest roads. And there was a family of deer, and I thought, well, how funny. Here I am at a four-way stop, kind of wanting to protect and assist the deer to cross the road. So I just telepathed them, and I am in my imagination lit up a route for them to quickly, safely cross the road, almost like I was lighting up little stones or something on the path, like, please, like, go this way, to be safe, and just all telepathically. And they totally got it, and they crossed over. Or instances where there's an animal that's trapped and injured. And of course, it's already upset, right? It's trapped in something and you're just coming to help it. And it's like more of a feral animal, so you have to hold that space of calmness, and you can telepath them. You can show them the movie through your mind with of course, all of this with your heart. Your heart has to be open. But you can show them what you're going to do and what the result is going to be. So there's like a bird and its feet were all caught up in these wires and it was scared. And you don't want it to peck at you, ideally, if you can, even though it's going to be afraid because it's trapped and it's in like a self-preservation response. And so you can telepath the images to it of, this is what I'm going to do to you. My intention is to unravel you from this mess and you're going to fly away. And you can even show them the image of them flying away. What's interesting, I didn't realize this. I don't know how new this is, but there's now like a law that humans aren't allowed to communicate with dolphins. And I thought that was pretty interesting. I think, well, that says a lot, if they don't want us communicating with our Syrian family. Very interesting stuff, but we have a lot to share. I will pass it over to you, Annette, wherever you want to go.
That's interesting. I never thought of showing them kind of the next steps of what you were going to do. I've never really thought about it in that regard because for me, and we can touch a little bit on like, how did you feel yourself? And I'll kick this question and you can pick it up, after I kind of am done. But like when your gifts start coming in, like I had one very strong come in way before I was into my ascension journey. That started for me like years before that. But one thing that I did notice, probably in the middle, maybe like 2015, 2016, 2017, that I wasn't, it's, to me, it wasn't so much two-way communication till I could take it there, but it's just you walk by an animal and then you just think about their cat food, and I'm like, oh yeah, I got to do that. And it took me a while to figure out, I'm like, oh, that's them. I'm reading their field. They're saying, hey, my cat food, you got to go do that. Like the animal I was talking to you about outside, he's a feral cat. And he had an eye swollen. He has been sick for like 3 weeks. So I had him on a lot of different homeopathic kind of stuff and some colloidal silver and a lot of different things. Because I can't touch him, but I can get him to, eat food, and he'll let me kind of get near him and feed him and stuff. But the other day I was getting his, stuff ready, and I felt like he'd be coming soon. And I was like, no, you got to get the Rust Tox. So I'm like, well, Rust Tox is really for a leg injury. He has an eye injury, but I put it in there. And then when I walked outside, he had like a bloody leg. I'm like, are you serious? You're killing me with this, dude. You're killing me. So we kind of pick up on even plants. You walk by a plant and you think, oh, I got to water the plant. It's not so much you're thinking, oh, I got to water the plant. You're reading the field that the plant needs water. So we pick up on this stuff all the time. We just negate it. Same thing with babies. Babies are very talkative. Infants will tell you everything you need to know. You walk by them and you're like, oh yeah, okay. They want this. They don't like this. You know, they don't like the slow drip nipple or whatever it is. You know, they want the faster nipple. They don't want it. They don't want. They want a bottle. They don't want this. It's all of it. It's everything that is you know, everything has a consciousness, and I think we just negate a lot of that stuff because even the, you know, we used to do Christmas cards, you do birthday cards, and people would say, oh, it's from the cat or it's from the dog. And it was kind of a fun thing, you know, people would do. But then I started thinking once, because I got one like that a couple years ago, and I was like, well, did they just sit there and think about it? And then, but was the cat reaching out to that person saying, hey, can you get my mom a Christmas card and put my name on it? Because I don't have opposable thumbs and I can't go to the store. So it makes you think about where do these images come in through? Did that person just think about that? No, of course not. They're getting that, they're picking up the message. You know, I took a class years ago from Robert Moss. I took like about a year of DreamWork classes from him. And one of the things he talked about was, you know, people picking up messages, but because people don't pick up the messages as soon as we send them telepathically, even if we're not trying to send them, you know, you're still giving off the message, whether you're trying to do it or not. And we're picking it up kind of all the time. But when we do that, so, you know, even if someone doesn't respond right away, or even if, you know, we're kind of focusing a little more on animals to start, if the animal doesn't respond right away, maybe they just haven't picked it up yet. It's kind of like they have to be in a certain frequency to get it. They might be, as Marissa said, they're too scared, and they're in a totally different brainwave state to get it, in a sense. And give them a little while, let them calm down, and then let them see where you are with it. But what we pick up on every day is just a very natural way to communicate with things. And what I will do now, I'm at the point where I can just say I want to go into the consciousness of whatever animal I want to go into. And if I want to touch on, if I think, okay, is that how is that leg doing? Let me feel into that. How bad does that eye hurt? Let me feel into what's going on. You just ask to be in that consciousness. And I'll do that with all the animals if I want to check on something with them. Like how are they feeling? You know, or what's going on? I feel like something's going on. And what is it? Left paw, right paw? What's going on? You'd be amazed at how much you can kind of tune in like that when you just ask to kind of to drop into that consciousness and their consciousness, and kind of, I don't want to use the word poke around, but in a sense, it's kind of what you're doing. You're kind of poking around a little bit. And there used to be a big thing when we would do this, you know, as Marissa touched on, not communicating with dolphins, but when you do any kind of energy courses, they say you have to ask permission before you can do any of that stuff, right? That was the big thing back in the day. You have to ask permission. You just pick up on stuff. You know, it's just energetically, you can just feel what's going on with somebody. You don't have to ask anybody. You can just feel it. It's all out there. There's nothing that you're giving off right now that someone else doesn't know. Are they consciously reading it? Probably not, but it doesn't mean they're not getting it. They just might not consciously know it yet. And that might take months down the road, maybe years down the road, but unconsciously they're getting the frequency you're putting off. And that's why it's so important to really kind of look at what we're doing. But animals, babies, they're such a great kind of, almost like a gateway, because they don't have all the stuff in the way, you know, and you can communicate with them, and you can really kind of get in there and really just play and have fun, and see, like, if I had there's a cat next to me here, she was recovering from surgery last year, so I'd go check on her and be like, okay, if I try arnica, how's that going to make that leg feel? And then I'd feel it in my body and go, okay, that's better. Okay, what if I throw rust toxin there? How does that feel? All right, that's pretty good. Or maybe, yeah, you don't need that, you know, and that's a good way to kind of do, because I do a lot more natural stuff with mine, especially the feral ones I have outside, because catching them and taking them to the vet, unless it's something super serious, I try not to go that route. I just try different homeopathic stuff. So I'll kind of just go into that consciousness. Okay, now I feel like it's the right eye that's injured. Let me try these things. How does that feel? And you will be surprised how much you can just pick up on just kind of being in that. So I'm gonna kick it back to you. And I did want to, like I said, like, how did you start developing your other senses? Or if you had one stronger in the beginning? I just thought that'd be a good place to go.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. Wonderful. And just want to give a shout out to one of our resident Jedis here. Thank you for being with us in the chat, Monk. We appreciate you being here with us. Such a lovely time to gather. So for me, I did a video a few years back about how those of us, depending on what kind of an environment you grew up in, if it was kind of a scary, so to say, environment, a very traumatic environment, like not where you could really feel super comfortable, a lot of us developed super sensory gifts because of that environment for like a survival. So it's almost like you have to be so in tune with your immediate environment that you can anticipate explosions so that you can kind of like prevent stuff. Like, I'm speaking kind of vaguely about this, but it's a fine tuning. And so for me, I actually had a lot of the starseed gifts and the psychic kind of stuff very early. Um, and I guess, well, this will lead us into the clairs because for me, a lot of the clairs were a natural thing. But before I don't want to forget this because I love this is so important. The whole class today, the whole talk today could be summarized by what you were sharing about reading the field. That's so important because when we're quiet inside, the head's not running, we're not looping a story or an emotion or a strong, loud thought. And we're kind of in this stillness and we're in the 0 point. You will receive so much information from your environment. Like it's actually off the charts. And that's something that I'm really excited for humanity as more and more people come into more of their own detox protocols and different things, whether it's habits of thought, any kind of toxicity. That's also huge for this eclipse is we're going to cut cords of toxicity, whether it's concepts of self or belief systems, anything that no longer assists us, right? So when we're in this stillness and in this silence, the trees are talking to you when you pass the trees, everything in your field, you're in its field. And so then you start to realize, oh my gosh, yeah, we're actually existing and functioning and walking in like a cosmic psychic soup of energy of the field. And we're in our field and it's rippling out with others. And it's becomes quite amazing. And it can also be intense depending upon the environment that you're in, the different energies you're around. Um, so I think that's really important to share because the more we're in that silence, in our inner peace, like after we have cleared our minds and our hearts are open, it's amazing the information that will come through with everything, literally everything around you. And a great example this weekend, I had a class. So I just started finally teaching in person classes again, healing arts classes. And the client I kept receiving like help her do this, help her with this maneuvering of herself to get more comfortable. And I waited until I was told it like 3 times because I was asking, like, I don't want to interrupt her flow. She's in a meditative state. And then it was, well, she's not willing to ask for herself, and she does need to learn to ask for what she needs, but you need to mirror that to her because she wants to move and she's scared to move and you have to help her. I'm like, okay. So you'll receive the information and then for me I take a moment, I take a pause to know what to do with the information or perhaps there is nothing to do with the information as well, depending on the situation. So sometimes we're using it to teach to allow another to speak up for themselves and say, "Oh, I'm actually not my back is hurting. Like I need to change my position." You'd be amazed how many people will just suffer in silence rather than feel like they're putting an imposition on us to request what they need. And this is a huge part of all of our collective liberation as well, right? But animal communication was huge and plant communication for me. So those were in my childhood very important actually for me to stay sane and to balance out the intensity of the humans that were going through their own awakening in the home environment, surrounded with, a lot of substance abuse and a lot of things. So there was a lot of kind of a wild, volatile environment. um, so yes, I would say the connection with the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom and the elementals. So receiving information, in the wind or watching the clouds. So it's kind of like environmental or elemental shamanism, being so here, and you're just kind of reading it or watching it, however you want to say, but you are taking it in. Very interesting. So thank you for that lovely question. And a hard one for me was clairsentience because we doubt ourselves, right? We're like, I know something, but I don't know how the fuck I know it. And I don't know how to prove to anyone, including myself, how I know this. Boy, that took decades to finally understand that that's what that was, but I didn't have a word for it. And around I think 2008 to 2012 time. I was working with a teacher, first learning about like quantum mechanics, and law of attraction, and we were just starting to talk about light body, which actually scared me because I thought it meant we were going to like dematerialize or something and like not be here. Our minds just don't know how to conceptualize. But she said to me, my teacher said to me, "You're clairsentient," and all of a sudden so much made sense to me. I was like, "Oh God, that's what you call that, where you just know things, because it's hard to not have proof, so to say." Uh, yes, so those were, and also uh, being able to read emotions in people. So this is part of our sensitizing ourselves, which is innately like our fields, our bodies are so sensitive to vibration. And we're going to dive even deeper into using the vibration to read the energy. But I want to start with emotion or energy inside the person. So you can actually start to feel, you can start to take an inventory of what's going on and what happened. So for instance, you're like, "I don't know, that person, there was something off. Something was weird about that in them. I don't know what it was." And then later you could describe it as they kind of feel constricted or like they're trying to, and then you realize that they were not being honest about something. So you can feel that shudder, that ripple of energy through a person, unless they're severely, like severely sociopathic and they don't have a conscience. So it depends, but I would say 95% of the time, you can tell when a person's lying. You can tell when they're uncomfortable. You can tell when they're sitting on something and bottling it up and they need to say something. You can tell when they misperceive what you're like. You can feel the frequencies. You can feel the vibration. The vibration might all of a sudden feel prickly from that person. Like, these are just some examples, but you can reference your whole life of experiences that you've already had with people and feel into like how you felt something was weird, and then what you ended up learning, you got more information later, and whatever happened. So those are some suggestions as well for kind of remembering, re-embodying these gifts that are already yours. And it comes with simplifying ourselves, our consciousness. So you want to have wide open sky mind, big blue, wide open sky mind, like you're taking it all in. And that's a lot to say. So I will pass it back to you as we keep ping ponging.
No, I loved when you were touched on, like, because you don't, in the beginning, sometimes we don't know. No, I didn't have, I mean, as a child, I think we all have, we're all more connected. Children are just more connected in general, but we do lose that over time. We get kind of thrust into the human consciousness, and as that develops and the human ego develops and the little child ego develops, you kind of see children start to shed a lot of that. Um, their consciousness, their frequency starts to drop, I guess probably is the best way to say it. But they've agreed to that. I mean, they've agreed to come in and have a certain experience. So that is kind of what that is. And for some children haven't agreed to have that experience, and they don't want their consciousness or their frequency to drop. And then they're with parents that are more open to and showing them a different way. And we're in some of those kids, we're in some of their lives, to continue them to expand and to not shut down. But for me, I'm very strong clairaudience. I've been pretty much strong clairaudience since 2013, right around when I started going through my awakening, strong awakening before my ascension. But that was my first one. But it's still the one I go back to. I go back to that one when I have a lot of emotion going on about something and I can't quite peg down on what it is I'm trying to know. That's the one I will always go back to. But I kind of always feel like, for me, you kind of go through all of them and you get to some people start off with the one you were at. Like, they just have a knowing. They just know. You know what I mean? They just know. Other people would say they cycle through all of them and then they come to this part where they just know. Now I'm at the point where I just know. I know it's going to happen. I don't need someone to tell me. We very rarely get surprised because you just kind of know. It might come in a kind of a little curveball way, but for the most part, you can kind of see years ahead and you kind of know how most things are going to play out. You know, um, I can remember years ago having tarot cards read, and so many people would get their tarot cards read, and I would see a lot of that stuff kind of play out for them. And every time I get mine read, I'm like, boy, none of that stuff ever happens. I was like, I don't understand what none of that ever happens at all. And it took me a while to realize that when you're on a different path and your frequency is changing so much, I mean, just anyone you go to see, or for to help you expand or whatever, they only can tap into what their frequency is. They can't go beyond that. So, and they're only going to be able to show you where you are at that exact moment. And once you leave that moment and your frequency shifts, you change the whole thing. I mean, like if you go to get your tarot cards read, they're only going to lay out the strongest energy to lay out every possible and the only frequency they can tap into. So if you change one thing, your frequency shifts, that whole thing's out the window and you're in a different timeline. And there was a time, especially in the beginning, when so many things are coming online for people, and it can be loud, it can bother them. I've had a couple of clients that said it's just so much at once. When these things start coming on, it is a lot at once because we're not used to it. We're human consciousness is in a different brainwave state. It's in a very beta brainwave state. It's not in more of the theta, delta, gamma brainwave state where you're slowing down a little bit, and the gamma more the more enlightened brainwave state. That's why I said a lot of people, you might try to telepathically. I'll use the word telepathically, but it is a human word. Reading the field's probably a better word. But if you do want to test some of this out, which in the beginning, I feel like when you test it out, it usually always works in the beginning because your universe wants to show you there's something to it. So it's kind of low hanging fruit in a sense. I always see people do this and they're like, oh, I did this. And then the next day it happened. And I'm like, really? I've been doing this for months and it hasn't happened yet. And you did it right away and it happened on the first try. Go figure that. That's amazing. So excited for you. Because in the beginning, it is kind of low hanging fruit because your universe wants to keep you going. And if you try it and nothing happens, people lose faith in that. So they want you to keep going with it. They want you to kind of keep exploring it. So in the beginning, you can try to send a message to someone and see when do they pick it up. Are they most people pick this stuff up when they sleep. That's why in the beginning, the dream state is the biggest part where you're going to explore the most and your gifts are going to come online the most. You're in a different brainwave state. You're more open to getting the messages. I talked before about the Robert Moss classes I took, and it was something he had called, I wrote it down, it's like the lost messages post office, where you go in your dream state and pick up your lost messages, the ones you missed, during the day, because you're so busy in everything else. In our human consciousness, people who still live in that consciousness every day, they're more conscious when they're sleeping. We're all more conscious when we're sleeping. No matter what your consciousness is, you're more conscious when you're sleeping because you're not at all hampered by the body frequency. But you can ask to pick up on stuff. You can ask, well, okay, let me go tonight. I'm going to make an intention in my dream state and go, I'm going to go to the post office and pick up my lost messages and see what comes through, see who comes through. And these are just kind of fun ways to play around to see, what am I missing? Because sometimes we feel like, what was that message I was trying to get? Because you touched on picking up on things. You can look at someone and like we get to a point where someone's lying. Now they're not trying to do it intentionally, but what they're saying. They have no intention of doing. They don't even have the capacity to do it. But their words are one thing. The frequency of how they're saying it, you're picking up on something differently. You get to the point where you can do that very consciously. What's going on with someone. You can just feel that. You can feel the field. You just read the field. It's their field. Their field. You can't hide your field. Like I said, you can't hide your field. I can't hide my field. Now, is someone I'm talking to getting it consciously, like I'm getting it when I'm in that frequency to get it? I mean, sometimes I feel like if I have a lot going on, I don't get it because if I'm in my monkey mind or I'm clearing something and I'm dropping down to a different brainwave state, I'm not getting it. I'm just going to miss it in that sense. When you're out in public, people say you're so. We can be so in tune when we're by ourselves because we can spread out, our frequency can raise, and you get around a lot of people and you feel like you kind of lose some of the capabilities. You don't so much lose the capabilities, your energy is going to keep your spin in a certain rate because if you're the highest person in the field, you have to compensate for everyone else there. So your gifts kind of will go offline a little bit because you're doing something else. You're trying to keep the field up. You're trying to support yourself. And if there's a lot of people around, I'm not as in tune as it would be if I was by myself and I just couldn't feel what's going on with everyone. And there is a part to that where people would say, well, isn't it intrusive for others? It's like, In a sense, I guess it would be intrusive if we acted on it in any way, in a sense, but it's just reading the field. You just get the information. It's like you're watching the news and it comes across the news. And, it's like you just know, like, oh, all right, that person is doing this, or this person's doing this. Or, like I said, I knew the cat had hurt its leg 2 hours before he hobbled home on that bloody leg. I'm like, oh, yeah, I got to go do that. Or I got to go put something else in his food. These are just things we kind of ignore. We don't pay attention to them because if there's the human always wants the proof. They want the proof. They want to know. They want to know why, and there is no proof in the beginning. And that's why our universe tries to give us something like, oh, you wanted to manifest this, and oh, here it is. The next day, or you wanted someone to call you. Oh my God, they just called you. Because we need something to hold on to. But then there'll be a time when it doesn't work as much anymore, because you don't get the external. Sometimes when you're really not comfortable with what you're getting internally, you go externally to see. Am I going to get it externally? Give me a sign. Let me see a blue bird or whatever your sign's going to be. After a while, that gets taken away because you really have to trust what you're getting. But for a while, that is something you can lean on when a lot of this stuff starts coming through, because it can be a lot. It's not. It can be unsettling, and because you're not used to it, and we are so used to shutting everything out and shutting out everything we feel and hear that we almost just don't. We don't even realize it, that how much we shut out, how much more is going on. It's like a whole different world out here that you, you don't even realize. Once you get out there, you're like, oh my gosh, it's like a whole different ecosystem out here. I had no idea all this stuff is going on, because we get so bogged down in everything else. So when you're talking about communicating with people, and when you try to have fun with a lot of these concepts, just remember that they might not pick up on them. They might not get these messages might go to their lost messages inbox, and they might not get it till months later. So I'm gonna kick it back to you, and I'm gonna run out and check real quick, and I'll let you take it.
Okay, so I love Annette was talking about, I'm gonna say, like, all the different frequencies. It's like interference in a way. So imagining that, you're out and about, you're out in the forest, and there's all these intersecting frequencies from the trees, the mycelium beneath you. Maybe there's a plane flying overhead. You've got the other people hiking or parked, different consciousnesses that are in the cars that are parked, all these things. And one of the things I had to learn very quickly was to ask to only receive the information that I needed to know and that was aligned for me to know, so that it wasn't too much. So that's something you can do, is just program the fields and just say, just tell me what I need to know. I don't need to worry about anything less, anything more, right? And then not having to worry about receiving too much that can bombard you or overwhelm you. It just depends on our roles and what we're here to see and kind of work through. So for me, I'll share, I went through an Oracle training, a formal training that was over 4 years. I was guided to do it by my universe in order to reopen like gifts from accumulated past lives, if you will. And so that training of a lot of stuff that we've done before in the mystery schools in other lives. So it's all here now. But it was about assisting me to trust more of the clairs. So I love when Annette was talking about the different clairs. So for me, clairsentience was just a normal part of my whole life, but that was coming from more of a survival to make it, to grow up. And then when it was time to do this oracle training, it came to a lot of other interesting blocks, where there were like protective implants put in place throughout my body and my chakras and stuff. So I didn't have a clairaudience really strongly until doing this work of unlocking and opening up, which was essentially a lot more emotional clearing and trauma work and akashic clearing work. But it had to do with the throat chakra and the heart chakra and the root, and then for women the womb. So just know that the more you clear yourself of emotional hangups or stories or low self-esteem or whatever, any of the small self kind of talk. When you heal those parts, you are whole, all your gifts blow open. And so for me now, clairaudience, since doing that training, and also clairvoyance, a lot stronger and very consistent, where it took a long time, to open up to them and get those muscles strong again. But what I learned was that we all have them, and some will kick on naturally, some we have to work harder for, if you will, but it's all part of being multidimensional. So all of this that we're discussing today, just know that it's your nature too. Is part of your whole like gifts and capabilities, being in this human form right now, which is really cool. Um, Let's see. I would love to talk about, because Annette talked about sleep, which was perfect because I have that on the list to talk about sleep. Naps to reboot yourself as a superpower. Um, so seeing when in the day you feel like a cat nap and just completely letting go, and imagine like what's happening as you're doing this is you're unplugging yourself so you're able to reboot your consciousness completely. So sometimes if you're going through something that's really challenging and you just can't really see a solution yet, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is so like so too much, take a nap, completely short circuit the whole thing and just stop the flow of that energy. And not, so many things could happen in the amount of time from when you decide to stop, just stop, drop, and nap. You could have some dreams. You could have some messages come while you're dozing and drifting. You could wake up with messages. You could wake up with getting paid. Like there's so it's very interesting to use sleep for many, many things. But one is to stop the energy flow when you're feeling blocked, frustrated, any of that. And this could be a 7 to 12 minute nap. Even if you have a busy life, right now with a lot of obligations, which all of us do, like we take care of so many beings and all these things, just know you can give yourself a little window of a pause and just lay down flat. Maybe put some lovely solfeggio tones on from YouTube, some of these wonderful healing energy music frequency channels, and just intend to just drop and let go and let yourself float and watch what happens. You all of a sudden you've transcended a lot of the emotions that were on that track, which was causing a feeling of blocked or resistance, if you will. So you can use your naps to reboot your reality, and you can sometimes you can use your naps to reboot your bank account. And of course, all of these things are not a guarantee. It's what's in alignment, but it's just fun to share like what has happened in the past, and really, really neat. And then another thing about the sleep state, like Annette was saying, is I love that the lost messages. That's so fabulous, Annette. And I want to add on to that, um, like bilocation or trilocation, where you can actually expedite your karmic clearing in your sleep. So it becomes very interesting because it's almost like we're working around the clock in different ways. And in your sleep state, you could be traveling. Back in the day, we would call that astral travel, but it's different. It's like a quantum, almost like a bilocating kind of thing. And you could be with different groups and teaching, or you could find yourself in classrooms. Very, very interesting, but also just clearing and purging the subconscious. And so you can set the intention before you go to sleep of asking for support to clear even more of the karmic timelines. And so then you're not dealing with these things in the waking reality. You can focus in your waking reality on your journey, on your healing journey or your goals or whatever, or fulfilling other roles. So sleep can become this multidimensional access because of the different brainwave states that you can access of many, many things. Fulfilling different roles, clearing at a very exceptional rate, again because the nervous system is in a different state and you've let go to be in that. Sleep is such a powerful form of surrender, if you will, right? So it just shows how powerful we are in our waking state and in our sleeping state, all these. um let's see. Yeah, so I wanted to say naps to reboot our reality as a superpower, um and how it helps you to completely let go of something and you can just pause. And let's see, something naturally you may observe just happening is the synesthesia experiences. And for me, I find that these occur when I'm really blissful. Maybe I've just been laughing and I'm feeling so good and I feel like the heart tickles and my frequency is high. Then all of a sudden it's like you can, I wrote down some examples, like you can smell colors or taste sounds, or a great example of this. I remember I first realized we had synesthesia when I was little. and I was watching the original Fantasia cartoon because the music, all of these different orchestra, compilations and stuff, you get visuals. So a great way to experiment is listening to classical music with your eyes closed and see what images your brain creates. And it will create these whole scenes and movies and all of this. And you could be in different time periods or with, fantasy creatures, like very interesting, to see what happens. And so it's just like almost like what happens when you do the float tanks, because you have the sensory deprivation now, all of a sudden it's like the DMT and all these higher faculties of the brain are taking you on a wild Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, which can be really neat. So I'll pass it back to you. I hope you maybe saw the cat in it.
No, alas, I do not. But it's the change in time. They're all off on their schedule. But anywho, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. I do want to go back. I like when you talk about naps as a superpower, because I think it's such a state that we just ignore. It is something that is I always say people will talk about the weirdest stuff. Back in the day, they call it like water cooler talk. They talk about sex. They talk about drugs. They would talk about whatever. But you talk about your dreams, they'd be like, "Wow, it's weird stuff." Ooh, it's too much. Why do you want to talk about what you dreamed last night? Now you've crossed over to something kind of woo and weird, because we always look at that like it's not the acceptance, it's not the it's not an accepted way to get information. It's not an accepted way to take what we get. I mean, I always said if you walked by a scene on the street of something you dreamed, and it was, oh, I dreamed about this person, or I dreamed about someone I didn't know, but they were lying in the street, and I walked by and I've dreamed it like 4 times, and it's, whatever, what's that? It's like, if this happened in your daily life and you walk by someone 4 times bleeding on the street, you would probably take more attention to it. But because it's in our dream state, we tend to discount it. It tends to be something that it's rubbish, or it's just our, the human consciousness will say it's just your mind working through something. It's like, and maybe in some form it can be, but it's working through so many deeper things, and you are seeing everything that's happening to your multidimensional selves. And I would always say, and so many times when I would go out and talk to people, dreams is where we'd always go to. I would always say, if you want to talk about a dream, come sit next to me, because we're just going to talk about it. We're going to pull it back and we're going to talk about it. And that's, everyone dreams. They used to say alcohol was a great, equalizer, because everyone that was in a bar, it didn't matter what your socioeconomic class was, everyone was there to drink. Well, everyone dreams. Everyone has access to those portals, and we do not utilize the space. We don't explore the space. We don't play in the space. We don't ask for more information. I would always tell people, if you have a decision to make, go to sleep one night and say, okay, if I make this decision, what happens? And how do you feel the next day? Don't go on if you saw anything. It doesn't matter if you saw anything. How do you feel? Do you get up and you feel good? You get up and you feel crappy. The next night, say, I'm going to dream about this. I want to see what happens if I do it a different way. If I take road A and not road B, what's that look like? It is such a powerful state, because no matter what your consciousness is, you have so much access. You're not going to dream the past. Your soul doesn't give a shit about the past. It's always looking forward. Even forward, you could say it's looking at a different frequency, but these are frequencies you already exist in somewhere. All this stuff happens. There's no closed system. It's all going to bleed through. It might not happen the exact way it did in the dream, but the energetics of that dream will eventually bleed through to get your attention. That's why we get deja vu, because we've seen it before. So many people will talk about their dreams, and a lot of people have very similar dreams. When I hear someone talk about the dream of I keep missing class, and I'm trying to take a test, but I'm not ready for the test, and I postpone the test, or I miss the test. I mean, to me, that's always a big ascension dream. Like, you're supposed to be at a certain space and you're delaying it. You're not hitting your mark. You're not doing what you need to do to get to that next space. Something's about to break for you because your body's trying to tell you, you need to be prepared. You're not prepared. You're not getting ready. As soon as you start doing what you're supposed to do, and you feel it, and you're really listening to yourself, and you're on that path, that dream stops. You don't have that dream anymore. You don't have that dream of, oh God, go ahead.
I have a funny dream that I would love for what you feel about this.
All right.
And I haven't had it in a long time, but I used to have it so much, and I think it's pretty funny. You're like in a place where you need to hurry up, whether you need to hurry to class or
Yeah.
you need to cross the street or something, and your legs are asleep and you like can't move. So it's like your legs are dead and you're like trying to move and you're like, oh my God. And you know how it feels when your limbs fall asleep and they're all tingly. And it's like, I
Mm-hmm.
would have that dream so much for, I don't even know, like 10 years. And it would
Mm-hmm.
always be different scenario, but my feet would be like, and my legs would be asleep. It was so funny.
No, I love that one. And that to me goes to the one about not being prepared for the test, not being ready. Sometimes we do so many things to avoid the soul stuff we're supposed to do. You're not dreaming your human shit. The human, it doesn't care about it. The soul doesn't care about it. Your multidimensional selves don't care about it. You're dreaming your soul stuff. These are your soul callings. These are what your soul's working through. It's not what your human's working through. Your soul's trying to tell you, look, you need to be ready for this. This is coming. You need to start listening to yourself. This is coming. You can't avoid this test. Did you just fail a math test? Oh, okay. I failed this math test in my dream 15 times because we're not getting prepared. What are we not doing? That's the stuff we want to start looking at. That's a dream I hear so much, and I always put it to that because I would have the same one. What am I not doing? What am I procrastinating? What do I know I need to do? I know I need to get that divorce. I know I need to sell that house. I know I need to do whatever it is, but I'm not doing it. So now I'm going to start having dreams about, okay, now you can't technically miss your mark. You're always going to hit your mark. Your universe will not let you miss your mark. Now you're landing on that mark. It's either going to be a cushy, soft landing, or you're going to land on your ass, depending on how long you wait to hit your mark. Eventually your universe will self-correct you. You can negate and you can avoid and you can continue to have these dreams. I mean, I would talk to so many people who would have the same dream 15 times and they keep trying to ignore it. Well, if you walk by the same shit 15 times every day, it would start to get your attention. But because it's a dream, we ignore it and say, oh, it's not important. In the beginning, that's how your soul's communicating with you. That's how it's trying to break through. That is it breaking through. And it always boggles my mind how much it gets discounted. In the beginning, that was huge for me. And I think it's huge for so many people because, like I said, it doesn't matter what consciousness you're in. If you're about to go through a big life change, you will always have a warning in your dream state. Whether you remember it, whether you connect it, whether a lot of times it's a lot of latency. You could dream something 4 years before it happens and you forgot about it. You could dream it 4 months before it happens, and all of a sudden something will happen. We always kind of know your universe, yourself will kind of let you start cutting the cords to certain things. It'll allow you to start letting go in that dream state, dreaming of that person leaving, and then they might not leave for 2 years or it might be 2 months, it might be 2 weeks, but your universe is preparing you. It's giving you that place to say, well, what if that did happen? I need to be ready for that because technically in a multidimensional universe of yourself, that has happened already, and you're peeking in to see it. Now, will everything we see happen? No. Some stuff you will breeze right through. You won't need to experience a reality. Others you will. And to me, in our human consciousness, we experience a lot more of these things because we don't listen. We take that state and we throw it away. And it is the easiest state to tap into. It is better than any type of therapy you're going to go through because you're just going to work on yourself. And like Marissa said, you can do it whenever. You can just lay down for 20 minutes. You can just work on whatever you want to work on. You can ask for more information. You can talk to people who passed away. That was one I would get so much. I never hear from these people. Well, have you asked to hear from these people? All these people are just aspects of you. You just want to bring them inside, in a sense. Them not being there just means you transcended the aspect to a sense, but you haven't let it go yet. You haven't fully embodied it yet. You still think it's separate from you, that you can't talk to them anymore. In this in the Robert Moss classes, I want to give him a lot of credit because a lot of this stuff was in a lot of the dream classes I took. And then I kind of see it from a different place now, but back then they were really huge openers for me. But one of the things he would say is that the difference between the living and the dead is as thin as the edge of a leaf, because there isn't really a difference. They're really not gone because they were always just an aspect of you anyway. They can't really go anywhere because they're you. We just don't see that. We just are too involved in our grief. So it is such a powerful state. And if you are in a place and you do want to talk to someone that's passed, you want to bring them inside. You want to embody them. Just ask. That was one thing I would ask people. Oh, well, I never see this. I never get to talk to this person. Yeah, have you asked? That's it. Did you ask? Have you allowed yourself to do these things in your dream state? Have you asked to utilize this state, or do you want to just use it as something that doesn't fucking matter? When it's telling you everything you need to know, it'll lay it all out for you, and you don't need to worry about dream dictionaries or any of that garbage. It doesn't matter what that stuff says. It matters what you think. How do you feel about it? None of that other stuff matters. It bogs us down with, oh, this means rebirth, or no, it doesn't. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. How does it feel? Maybe it just means what it means. But don't ignore it. And especially things that are repeating. If you're having a repetitive dream, I would 100% pay attention to it, because I'll reiterate again and then I'm going to pass it to you. If it happened when you were awake and you kept repeating the same thing every day, you would damn well pay attention to it. So I'm going to kick it back to you.
I love that we've got into dream work today. So awesome. And thank you for assisting everyone to remember that there's no separation between the waking and the sleep. They're different frequencies, but neither is less important. Like, that's so huge, right? For us to start to really understand how important and relevant everything is. If it wasn't, it wouldn't be showing up. Um, and on the subject of dream work, I wanted to share. Oh, and I also want to thank you so much for assisting people to see how easy it is. All you got to do is ask. Formerly we would call this the mediumship gifts and abilities, right? I speak to the dead. Well, we all do. If you do it, like, did you ask? So I love that. Thank you for that. Uh, but mugwort, I wanted to share for anyone out there that
Let me
wants to
say
get
this real
into.
quick. If you ask, then are you really open to hearing it? Because that's the next thing. Some people say, I asked, but do you really want to know? Because if you don't want to know, then you're doing just, you're doing a confusing frequency. Because I want to know, but I don't know. I don't know if I do. I don't know if I do. All right, I'm gonna mute.
It's so good. The herb mugwort. If you can get your hands on some mugwort, boy, is that stuff powerful. If you have one leaf and you burn that leaf before bed, and not even the whole leaf, just having a little wisp of smoke in your room and you blow it out, boy, will that enhance your dream state. So mugwort is very powerful. It's a very moony, magical herb connecting to the subconscious and the moon, and very powerful. So highly, highly recommend that. Also asking, please show me what has been challenging for me to see in the waking state. Maybe our heads are still taking control, wherever we are on the path, where it's harder for us still to receive. But just know it will continue to get easier for you to receive, because that's also part of your gifts. And that's part of the embodiment, right? The divine, sacred, feminine, receptive. So being receptive to information, right? So I love that. I wanted to bring in the mugwort, and talking about herbs in general reminds me of another beautiful gift of connection to Gaia and the plant people, and the herbal realm is such a wonderful entrance also into a lot of magic and exploration. And when you are called and you open your heart and you spend time with the plants, you will start to find that they will call you. You'll hear their name in your mind, and maybe it's you've never heard of this plant. You look it up, and it's actually, you thought it was a weed, outside your front door. Very interesting. Also, like, they'll kind of grab your attention. Let's see. What else did I want to talk about? There was so much here. Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. So we talked about sensitizing ourselves to read the field, which is actually part of all of our natural abilities, right? And then we have too much disturbance, too much interference. all around us, meaning that we don't know how to focus. We're a little scattered, a little distracted, and perhaps a little fragmented into separated into a bunch of places. So when you're in your unified, simplified state of silence and peace and open receptivity, like I call it, like the big open blue sky mind, you'll start to be really aware now of the vibrational frequencies of sounds. And a gift that I started to observe, which I thought was really fucking cool, was that I could tell by the way a name of a person or a place on the planet or another galactic species, whatever. So the person's voice, their voice signature, or a name of a place or a person or a thing, I could get all the information I needed from that sound clip of whether or not it was aligned for me. So you can start to, the more open and receptive you are to receiving information, asking for the information, and so you're not wasting any time. You're not getting distracted, you're not wasting any time or energy with something that's not aligned for you, and your body will tell you. You'll feel it. You're like, "Yay, open," or "Meh, no." You know. So, yeah, I think I wrote down hearing the information, being open, and there are some light installation, light body technology, like kind of like a quantum galactic crystalline receiver pieces that you can ask to open. So you have crystals in your throat chakra. You have special crystals in your ears, and these are ways of almost like I think I was told it was like a transceiver kind of thing. So you're receiving and transmitting information, so you're able to hear multidimensional information based on something like this, the name of a place. Someone says the name of the place, and you can just feel in your body, like, oh no, that place is not for me, at least at this time. Or someone says, oh, I want to introduce you to my friend so and so. But you can feel like, no, they're too in their head, I can't help them. Like, it's really interesting, and it's not coming from a judgmental place. You can feel the quality of the delivery of the information is a very soft, very neutral frequency in that voice, if you will. It's not really a voice, it's the knowing. But you can feel that it's a soft energy. It's not coming from harshness or a judgmental or like a past, like referencing the past, like, oh, I'm scared of people, so they're all bad. No, it's not that. You're so in the moment, so receptive and so neutralized, that you can, receive these subtleties. Um, so I want to make sure I say it again. Hearing the information, really hearing, turn those crystals on in your ears, the multidimensional, higher ability crystals in your ears and in your brain, hearing info in frequency, slash voice or slash sound of a person, a place, and in names. That's another really cool, like, gift, if you will. Yeah, and I will pass it back to you.
No, I love when you talk about, kind of being able to know if something's for you by just kind of hearing it. It kind of, our human consciousness will go back to, if you ever watched the show, I guess everyone watched the show Friends, right? But it was the character on there that was Chandler's girlfriend that had that really high pitched voice when she would talk. I can't remember what her name was. I can't remember what her name was, but it's just it'll kind of be something like that. It won't sound like that. But the frequency just kind of grades on you. There's sometimes you'll turn on something, and it could be a meditation. It could be listening to someone talk about something, and the minute you hear it, you can't even hear it. You can't hear it. It's the frequency is not where you are, or it could be the frequency is too high to where you are. And sometimes I might listen to something and it's like, no, that frequency is too high. I don't want to hear that right now. I'm clearing something. I don't want to hear that right now. I'm in the middle of a different process. So it doesn't necessarily have to mean it's, not a frequency. I will use the word lower here, but like I said, not to judge it, just to kind of categorize it. It couldn't be a lower frequency. You can tell that when you put your body in lower frequency places, that it's not happy and you can't expand and your body's working overtime just to exist there in a sense. But you can just kind of tell, it doesn't mean these people they're not just one aspect. These people can shift into a lot of different aspects. As an example, I remember, of so many of my friends, they might get divorced or they might break up with someone, and they would go, boy, that they go into the relationship right away, and they're like just this amazing person in this new relationship. And I'm like, well, that's because they're showing a different aspect of them. They're showing a more angelic aspect of them, or they're showing just a different, maybe they're showing a galactic aspect of them, but they're showing a different aspect of them. The thing is, it's just the beginning. They can't hold that aspect yet. They haven't embodied that aspect. They didn't go from one day not being that aspect to the next day embodying an aspect. It doesn't work that way. It can take years to embody an aspect. But that doesn't mean they can't hit that aspect. They can still hit that aspect and transmit that out, but they can't hold it. That's why a lot of people would say just spend a lot of time with people. The first couple times you meet people, you might see their soul in the beginning, a certain aspect of their soul, but there's not that frequency they live from every day. That's just what you're seeing that first time. You got to see people multiple times and really see what can they hold. Anyone can, just to be a Boy Scout for 24 for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, but can they hold that aspect? And what's their home frequency in a sense? Where do they go back to when things aren't perfect and they're not trying to impress anymore? We used to call it, if you were dating someone, that's the A game. Well, if the A game is pretty piss poor, you don't want to see the B, C, and D game. If they're starting out with shit, then how bad it's going to get later on, because that is when you're really trying to impress, and if you're starting out, in a really, really not being respectful, not listening, not any of that, not really caring about what the other person is doing, and we might be doing the same thing too, so it can work both ways. You don't want to see the rest of it. You can always see. It doesn't mean anything's wrong with that person. They're just in a different place. They are not, maybe they haven't gone through any of this stuff yet. They're in the beginning, or maybe they might not go through it for decades. That's the beauty of how many people we can touch with our presence, but it doesn't mean they're going to be in our lives. And most people aren't going to be. It's more of to me, transitional with a lot of people, just because your frequency changes, and a lot of people, they don't. Human consciousness doesn't change frequencies that quickly. They're always ticking up. You're always ticking up. Even our human consciousness, we're ticking up. We're just ticking up so small, it doesn't really change much. We don't really get to anything. We don't really work through very much. It can take us decades to work through something because we tick up so slowly, because we're not making the conscious choice to do it. We're letting the environment and stuff our universe sets up with us, everything we go through, it ticks up our frequency. We go through an experience, we clear something, we tick up our frequency a little bit. We still might go through another layer of it, and again and again and again for decades, because we don't move that fast. Human consciousness does not move that fast. That's why when we say you might talk to someone tomorrow, you might not see them for 10 years. And yeah, they'll be in a different place, but they might not be where you think they're going to be 10 years later, because it's a different pace. It is a different pace. And I do want to touch on this back with the dream space again. Like in the beginning, I had you could also, some people tape amethyst to their third eye. People use a lot of crystals under their pillows. I would do that in the beginning. That would really, again, really is another way to really kind of open you up to everything you're kind of missing in a sense, and that space in that world. But my dream states changed a lot. I don't see that much anymore. Very rarely. Now I just really clear in it. And I don't have, and for a while I felt like I kind of lost that connection. And then I realized I don't need it anymore. I'm just as conscious. Yes, I'm higher frequency in my dream state. We always are. You're always going to be higher in your dream state than you are in your body state. But I'm high enough in my body state now. I don't require the dream state to know what's going on. I don't require the dream state to see a timeline how it's going to play out. I don't require to see it there anymore, because our waking state will get to a place where we can see it in our waking state. So the dream state then shifts to something else. And you still might get the bigger things in the dream state, like some really big life shifts coming in the dream state first to kind of get you ready for that. But you might see it change and you might see it shift. So I'll kick it back to you.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Another one, I don't want to forget this, is kind of fun, is maybe when it comes to body work or interacting with nature. Basically, the sense of touch is what I'm referencing. And realizing that with certain beings, whether it's other people or the trees or even animals, that you have like eyeballs in your fingertips with x-ray vision. And so a lot of these, again, when I've had these experiences, it's not like every day, all day, everything. It's certain aligned experiences where I'm really open and soft. And my heart, of course, my heart is open, what I mean when I say that. And it's a very easy exchange of energy with the other being, the other sentience with you. But that's very interesting too. So, any of you in the healing arts, massage therapy or anything, even like energy healing or whatever kind of practices, or if you're called to work with animals and work with, tending a garden or even taking care of plants that you just happen to see, like you're out hiking, you're like, oh, that plant needs some help. Very interesting kind of stuff. So, it also brings to mind, like, the images from the first Avatar movie of how they can plug in, they're literally plugging in essentially their root and, like, a line to their light body, into Gaia or other creatures. It's very interesting to me, and so we can do that through touch, and if you've ever worked with horses, you can notice that the horse actually reads people's nervous systems, which is why it's so powerful for those who are going through a lot of maybe some of the initial integration and healing on their journey from trauma. Nervous system regulation, what's really interesting is that as a superpower, the horse's nervous system will kind of sync up with a traumatized individual and almost wrap that person and their soul and their fields in this kind of harmonized, loving, stable, and very strong, comforting place. And then all of a sudden that person's nervous system can finally let go. It's almost like they're so tightly gripping in their root chakra from so much like, deep trauma that they can't even relax. They really can't let go at all. And another wonderful one that I started to learn about, you could check out the Heart Math Institute, heartmath.org, I think it is. Wonderful to learn about the powers of our heart chakra and our magnetics and our fields and how large our heart's fields actually are all around us. So, this kind of goes into collective grid working. It also goes into grid working in a way where synchronizing our nervous systems. So, a great example is when I was working at a holistic rehab and we would have group classes. And I was studying the Heart Math Institute's work at the time, and they were sharing about how the most powerful nervous system in the room, whether it's someone that's tripping out and they are going through a breakdown, like a nervous breakdown, or a person who's super peaceful and kind of Zen Buddha loving, whichever is the strongest, everyone in the room is going to synchronize to that. And so that actually shows you a lot about our collective fields and like our individual grids syncing up, and all of us linking up together as the crystalline grids through our hearts, so the heart grids. And that there are many grids. There's root chakra ones, there's womb chakra ones, heart ones, even, third eye and crown. And so it's so important to uh, call in our psychic immunity and our full sovereignty and alignment, that we are creating sovereign and free from our own inner vision and not any other kind of a narrative. And knowing that we have that understanding, a great example was when I was grocery shopping and it was when COVID first started and people were really freaked out. And I would grocery shop because I really wasn't worried because I knew what it was. And I would shop for people to deliver their food and stuff. And I remember people would be really attracted to my energy in the grocery stores and they would come up to me and like an elderly man came up to me and he was like, "Do you think that we need to be afraid of this? Like what do you think is going on?" It was such an interesting encounter and I just looked at him and I just smiled. I said, "I think everything's going to be just fine. We'll just take it one day at a time, but sometimes things look worse than they are. But it was a part of my service work was like on the surface, you could say delivering groceries, but it was also being on the, boots on the ground to support the grids with my own field of peace and calmness and not fear when there was a lot of fear. And we go through phases. That's not necessarily something you're going to be responsible for your entire life. You may go through phases of that, but it's about, I think, increasing our light quotients as well. So then we become almost like a nuclear power plant, of divine light around the community. And then other times you're not anywhere to be found. You're completely disappearing in a hermit space, which I do often as well, a lot. But just wanted to share that talk about superpowers and our superhuman, super being abilities is that, the rest of this year, this linear year of 2025, we're going to be, I think, opening up to and seeing a lot more wonderful evidence on a mass scale of things that we have known. And some great fun movies just to play are the movie Push is really great with superpowers. This was pre-Marvel, so if you wanna imagine Chris Evans pre-Captain America, it's quite a trip, and, I think, Dakota Fanning, she's, like, 13, but they're all they all have different gifts and abilities, and then also the movie Serenity, another kinda galactic movie, and, it's interesting too because it will bring in some of the sci-fi stuff about, uh like different institutions, we'll just say to encode it like alphabet institutions and what they know of when it comes to like remote viewing, all of these different abilities. And just to share, as we're exploring on the path in our awakening and then our ascension, you don't really do things like remote viewing anymore because it'll come to you. The information will come to you, right? Versus putting yourself out there. And one of the things that, oh yeah, Powder. Thank you, Corey. I saw the movie Powder. Oh my gosh, you guys, it's quite a tearjerker, but it's such a thank you, Corey. It's such a good movie. Yeah, the movie Powder is unbelievable. It's an intergalactic star-seeded being that comes here and is such a beautiful mythic Buddha Christed avatar consciousness being, and truly miraculous powers, and humanity doesn't know how to deal with that, which is interesting. Um, so yeah, those are a couple really cool movies just to have fun. Um, and it's all about relaxing. It's all about surrendering. It's all about not trying. More will be revealed, as we soften, as we make space. Like making space is the most important part. So the cord cutting, the clearing, the releasing, the reversals. So a lot of the reversals of meaning letting go of the old self, Um, and I just remembered it and then I just forgot it. I'm sorry, my brain is going like so fast at so many millions of so much flooding through. Um, oh yes, the elementals. Yes. Okay. Thank you. So there's an amazing yoga teacher, Sri Kaleshwar, and he was responsible for bringing through the holy womb chakra technology, which is a light body technology that a lot of the ascended masters used. His celebration of his Mahasamadhi of when he ascended is actually this Saturday, the 15th. But if you're feeling him, if you're feeling called to check out this amazing guy, he has on his school website, it's the Divine Mother Lineage in California. He has a center, an ashram with his teachings, and they're still continuing his work. And he has an elements program. So what's been interesting for me to observe over the years is that there's a lot of entertainment. Like I think of like the Avatar: The Last Airbender, even Captain Planet. I fucking loved Captain Planet as a kid. I hardly ever watched TV because we didn't have TV, but sometimes I would get to see it at other people's houses and Captain Planet, and they all had different elements that they were guardians of, stewards of. So this brings in like our elemental activations and all the wizards, doesn't matter what mystery traditions you're reviewing, but all of the different magic, in Western and Western and Eastern, the esoteric connection of us with the unified field is starting to learn from the elements as master teachers. And even think about another great example, the movie The Fifth Element. Very interesting, bringing in the galactics with that. But he has a free course on his website, and it is a very in-depth kind of practice. There's mantra and all of this, but essentially you're activating your own connections, part of the Far East, the wisdom of the Far East, and the rishis and the sages. One of our brothers in here mentioned the cities, the yogic powers. These are all natural byproducts of our enlightenment. So that's what I guess what I'm trying to say is when I say just relax and ease into it and have fun and be open and ask to be shown, But if you're interested, you can do that program for free, the elemental activation. I want to say it's like a 5-week program or maybe more. Maybe it's a month with each element. Maybe it's that like 5 months. It's quite an investment of energy, but it's like real life Jedi kind of training if you're interested in that kind of thing. Which I always love to geek out and share resources, for you all to have fun. And yeah, and if you have any other anything else, Annette, and then we'll wrap up, I guess.
I was gonna say I always really liked Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That was one of my favorite. Favorite shows. I love that show. Still, I think my favorite show to date. Um, and all the Marvel movies, even the DC movies, they're kind of just really fun. They really activate your superheroes. They really activate your even the Harry Potter movies. Even though I'm never super into wizarding energy, there is kind of it's not a pure energy. You can kind of feel that when you get into it. It's kind of like witchcraft. Those kind of a lot of they just get tainted along the way a little bit, but they will activate those the power within you in a sense, and the power that we do create everything. And we're either going to do it consciously or we're going to continue to do it unconsciously, but it's still us creating it. I know we've had a lot of great comments tonight, and one of them I remember that popped up. It was, this a beautiful illusion, but it's all an illusion. It's just which one you want to believe in. None of it's real. I mean, you can make it as pretty as you want to, but it's still an illusion, and we still create what we create, and we have to live with what we created. And it is easy to say relax and let it come, but when you're really trying to hone in, usually these things come, the more of your gifts will start to come in when you're not trying. And I know when you said that, it's like it's almost easier said than done because you want them so bad. You want them so bad, and then you get them, you're like, oh, I don't know if I want them or not, because now you see how much you can affect. You see all the things you do. And it was funny, you said something in the beginning about the animals, and it reminded me of everyone now. Support animals are such a massive, everyone has a support animal, to go anywhere now, because people are feeling so much disjointed, so much disconnection. They're just reaching out for anything they can reach out to. I mean, people have support animals to go to the mailbox. I mean, it's unbelievable now how mainstream that is, and how it's just so commonplace because people feel so disconnected, and the phones and all that stuff just leads into more disconnection. Even though it was marketed to connect us more, it ends up just disconnecting everybody even more, because a lot of these things are meant to sever our connections. And in some frequencies we can look and go, okay, in some realities I needed to sever that connection. Other ones I'm like, it's going to change. That's why there's no set rule on what you're supposed to be doing and what you're not supposed to be doing, because it's the frequency you're doing it from. And in one case you might feel I'm not supposed to be around the phones at all because I'm in a different space. I'm not supposed to be around any electronics at all. And other days you'll be like, no, I feel like I can be, and I want to connect. And that is more of a way to connect. You just kind of have to take it. I will tell you, when you're really looking for an answer, you're not going to see it, because the answer is not in the frequency you're in. You're always going to look down. You're going to get your frequency up, and you're going to look down and see the reality. Your higher, your consciousness is always going to be higher than the body frequency. It's always going to be that way. Okay, your frequency is going to pull the body frequency up like a hot air balloon. It's going to be able to pull it up, but you're always going to reach a higher consciousness. Then your body's going to set in. You're always going to be able to reach higher than that. And you're going to look down and see the realities and see why they played out that way and see how you can align it and have the answers you need. You'll always get the answers you need. You just normally you don't get them until you're out of that reality. You're getting ready to close out that reality because your frequency has now surpassed that reality, and the information is in that different frequency. And now all of a sudden you can see it all, and now all of a sudden you understand it all, because you're like, oh, now that makes sense. Now I understand why it had to be that way. Now I understand. There was an old my grandmother used to say, oh, everything always works out for the best. It always works out for the best. And that's very true. It always will. It'll always, if anyone has a grandfather clock, and if you ever had your grandfather clock worked on, and you will have noticed this, any grandfather clock owners, and the person will say, oh, it'll just fix itself. It'll get back on track. And I'm like, yeah, but how does it do that? How does it just fix itself? It's all off, and now all of a sudden now it's all back on. How does it happen? It's dinging all the wrong time. It's all not dinging right. All of a sudden, give it a couple hours, it'll get back. I'm like, and it does. And you clock people out there, they can explain to me for whatever reason, it will self-correct and it will figure its way back out again, right? Well, our realities will do the same thing. Your reality will self-correct. You can let it spin as far out of control as you want it to. It will self-correct. It will get back online on its own. Marissa and I do these things because you don't want it to self-correct on its own. That is not what you want, because I've been through many self-corrections on my own, and I'm sure Marissa has too, and they are not fun, and they are not pleasant. And like I said, you might think I'm gonna jump out this window, and because you didn't jump when you knew you had to jump, now you used to have a cushy mattress you were gonna land on. Now you've got the thin sheet of cardboard down there you're gonna land on when you hit because you waited so long, right? Um, so it is important to just remember, you might not know why you're doing something right now. You might not know for years later why, you know, why you had to take that action. And normally it's not going to be a linear thing. You might say, oh, I know I'm going to write this book, but right now I have to move to Oregon. I don't know why. We don't know. I just have to. And why? I don't know. Because it's not the linear path. We have this idea that the linear path it's kind of reminded me in the beginning, Marissa, when you were talking about how the steps light up. It's not like if you watch a Wizard of Oz, you follow the yellow brick road, right? And the human consciousness road it looks like this great gold road, and we're going to walk down this road, and it's beautiful, and people cheering you as you go. And then you look at the Ascension Road, and that's got a lot of stuff on it, and it's all overgrown, and jungly, and you're like, no, I got to go down that one. I can't go down the yellow brick road with Dorothy. I got to go down this road. Well, most people are going to choose to go on that road until they realize they're just going around a big circle on that road. And if you could cut through the thicket on this road, you'll realize this road really is the direct path to where you want to go. It's maybe, a tenth of the length of the road over here, the yellow brick road, but you can't see that because there's so much shit in it we got to get through to get there, right? So it's not the linear path. It is the road less traveled for a reason. It used to be, I remember 10, 15 years ago, you would see, yeah, I like that, Corey. Well, you're going to see the Sasquatch on your path. Probably a lot of stuff you're going to wish you hadn't seen, and stuff you could not see again. Stuff you can never not see again, right? You'll be ingrained into your eyeballs forever, and stuff you wish you had not seen. But that's the way we got to go. So you can't fault people when they're not in that frequency and have that exploration to go that way. They don't want to go that way with you. That way looks ridiculous. Look at this gold road over here. You don't want to go down that one? I mean, why? Why would you pick this road? And it's just funny that's what we have to do. We take the nonlinear path, but it's going to get you there quicker. It's just you can't see that, and I was going to say something else, but I can't remember what it was. So I'll kick it back to you, and I know we're going to sign off. So I will just say goodbye to everyone, and I will let you close out.
Oh my gosh, so I was like, thank you, that was such a good laugh. I had like a medicinal laugh just now. First of all, you're just so fucking funny. But as you were talking about like going down the golden path and people cheering you, I started laughing so hard because I was having this vision of in the Princess Bride. She has that nightmare where she wakes up, or in the nightmare, and she's being crowned and made to be Princess Buttercup and all of this, and this woman is just boo, boo in the crowd and like throwing tomatoes, because sometimes that's what it feels like, because no one else knows what the fuck you're doing, and they don't understand it, and they can't support it. So I was laughing because I was like, yeah, it's quite a contrast. You think it's going to be, the gold road, and here's a lollipop, and like, yay, we're going to cheer you on. And it's there's no one, or sometimes, you're getting the lettuce and the tomatoes thrown at you. So you got to stay neutral, and just keep listening to your heart, through all of this. And then Corey saying right through the shrubbery, I'm like hearing like, oh gosh, now I forget, but there's the Rabbit and the Knights, and that really funny comedy movie. I can't remember I know you guys know what I'm talking about. It's a really old comedy movie. But they're like afraid of a rabbit. The rabbit is actually like the scariest monster in the movie. I'm totally blanking. I cannot. My mind, I have like a headache too. There's just so much energy with all of this with this eclipse. But I want to thank everyone for showing up here always in your lives. in everything you're doing and being here with us, whether you're on the live or on the replay. And I do want to share that, with this eclipse energy, with so much coming and going, so much forming and dissolving. I mean, I feel this is an unprecedented time. The intensity of everything, we haven't had a cycle like this astrologically in 6,500 years. So we're on the brink of we're in the birthing process of an entirely new era, that we're largely responsible for, as an inside job. And so I wanted to share that I am giving an eclipse special for readings. It's $111 off, and we do your charts. And I also show you how to build the frequency inside. So when we talk about building the frequency to attain the information, it's different than the ask. The frequency of the ask is a different frequency than the answer, right? Than the information. And so what I teach you in these sessions is, and it's just one session, and you have the skill for the rest of your life. It's on recording, is how to build the frequency inside to get into the oracle state, which is a gamma/theta state, which is the quantum entanglement, which is the truth of our highest capacity, which we can access at any time. You can turn it on and off like a switch. It's just about frequency. So just remember that. You didn't lose everything, you didn't fall off. You're just in a different frequency. And it doesn't mean you made a mistake either, because there's cosmic stuff happening. There's all kinds of stuff happening where all of a sudden, oh my gosh, when did the channel just change, And so then you just turn that dial back, And Annette also, she has her beautiful website, Art of Intuition, with her awesome offerings too. And she has an amazing oracle card deck that she sent me, which is really brilliant. Thank you, Corey. I knew you would know the movie Monty Python. Monty Python and the Holy Grail. That's a great movie to watch, to just laugh through all of this intensity and all of this seriousness. Because remember, they don't even have horses. They're just clopping along. And then the one guy's in charge of the coconuts to make it sound like they're clopping along. And there's so many metaphors for this in the journey, of where it's a very inside job and not everyone can tell what we're doing. And so thank you, Corey, for that. And thank you for being here with us too, Corey. And yeah, if you want to say anything else, Annette, because you're just so wonderful, before we sign off, and then we'll go.
No, I think I'm good. And the cat was in there. She started. I'm trying to put some furniture together. It said it was going to take 2 hours, so I'm thinking about 15. I'm already like 3 hours in, and I've only got like 2 boards up. But she's chewing on it. I'm like, stop chewing on the furniture. I think she's like, I'm ready. I'm ready. It's time to end it. The moment's gone. She's like, it's time to go. So thank you. It was so much fun. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it tonight, and everyone who participated in the chat, we both appreciate that very, very much. So, all right.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week. Namaste. Thank you, Annette. Thank you, everyone.